Checking in on Canadian MJ, we're going to look at the big five, tier 2, 3, VFF, TGOD, N, CXXI, and NRTH. So we've got our tightening pattern. We followed through with further pullback from Friday. So that's a clear lower high now on the daily time frame for CGC. That level is 48.40. The question now is, has our higher low already formed with the lower wick that is on today's candlestick? And the answer is, go to the hourly time frame. The dump happened today. Look at the correlation with the S&P 500. We had the most significant dump from the S&P 500 that we've seen since the bounce started back at the end of December. And we saw a huge recovery as well. But it's an all-out dump. It's a bounce looking for an hourly lower high. The question is, do we form a higher low and see an hourly equilibrium and a tightening range into tomorrow? Do we form a higher low and a higher high? Do we form a higher low and then a bear break? If we bear break and cannot change this hourly trend, then our daily higher low has not been set yet, and we're still watching our key 42.91 support. If the hourly trend does change with the higher low and higher high, then that may be our daily higher low already being set, which would give us a very tight range to be watching for the rest of the week as we look for the break of this equilibrium sometime end of this week or early next week. So patiently waiting and looking for that break to occur to give the signal as to whether or not we're heading back up towards the recent high or whether further weekly consolidation is going to be taking place. Cron is doing the exact same thing. So we've got our high, low of the pullback, lower high, higher low, lower high. And the question is this already our higher low having formed at 2067? The key support was 1950, resistance is 2227, and we pulled back a solid amount from that resistance, but it's the same thing on the hourly. Very solid bounce. You can see the bounce is stronger than CGC on the hourly time frame, just in terms of the clarity and strength. And it's the same thing. Hourly higher low and higher high tells us the daily higher low is set in that equilibrium, or if we break bearish from it, then we know it has not been set yet. So tomorrow is going to be a telling day, but anticipating a tightening hourly range into tomorrow with what we got for the hourly range for today. And again, correlation to the S&P 500, cannot stress enough how we need to be watching it, and people are taking it for granted that we've just had a bullish environment for 10 weeks. Here's SPY on the 15-minute time frame, and look at the correlation with Cron here just in today's action. And if we pull up CGC and compare it to SPY on the 15-minute time frame, again, extremely correlated. So keep an eye on it. APHA. So we've had a lot of news today as well. Didn't touch base on that, but individual names, ton of news to start off the week. We've got key resistance of 1059, and we broke that level without a whole lot of follow through. So looking at the hourly, same thing, just in terms of the wide range and tightening range that we're anticipating. High, low of the pullback. We're looking for an hourly lower high to be set, and then we'll see if we can form the higher low. Size of the bounces that we've seen at this point out of these three names on the hourly time frame indicates that a higher low is the more likely scenario for the bulls to pull off in terms of the tightening range. And again, anticipating tightening ranges into tomorrow, and then a break of those hourly tightening ranges will give good clarity for midweek. ACB daily chart, close to losing the uptrend. We have to hold 689 support in order to maintain the daily higher low pattern. Hourly bounce, looking at it compared to everybody else. High of the day, low of the day, looking for the hourly lower high to be set. Have to change the hourly trend for us to say our daily higher low has been established, and that hasn't happened yet. So we'll keep an eye out for the hourly trend change on ACB for us to be able to say, all right, higher low on the daily is now set, and we're going to look for a bounce back into the upper $7 range. TLRY, bear break occurred on the daily chart. Not much follow through. We broke support of 76.60, 76.08 held, so keep in mind the weekly level is different than the daily level. The key weekly support is 75.25 for this equilibrium that we've been within for a couple months, and we are still holding that level at this point. 75.25 is the most important support to me, and now 83.10 is the most important resistance for me. We've been within this range for the last month, and we are looking for a clear break. Daily bear break today, but it wasn't a weekly bear break. So looking at the hourly time frame, same kind of dump and hourly bounce, lower high set at the end of the day. So 77.94 will be resistance, and support is down at 76.08 with 75.05 the most important level, or 75.25. So look at the hourly volume. It's been a lot of bear volume. We had increasing bear volume, very low bull volume on this bounce. So if we do drop to a lower high and a lower low, that key weekly support is going to be right there. As far as the daily and weekly setup, TLRY is the weakest out of the big 5 names that we are looking at. And if these names, CGC and Cron, were to break bearish on their daily equilibriums, we would certainly be looking for TLRY to head back into the 60s. But that remains to be seen just yet. They have the closest setup to a bear break right now. OGI finally getting some strength into its close for the blue sky breakout. Higher low every day, 6 days in a row. Strong close, increasing bull volume today, and a higher low established on the hourly this morning at 8:56, and then continuation into blue sky breakout over 9 psychological. So resistance is going to be 912, 950, $10, just psychological levels, and anything above 856 keeps the bulls in control with an hourly higher low. HEXO, bear break on the daily, but not a lot of follow through, a long lower wick. So that shows us the bulls buying the dip, and it's a little bit choppy right now on this daily time frame. So looking at it on the weekly, just to get a little bit more clarity, we can see we're clearly still in an uptrend. Anything above 658 is a higher low. So bulls are looking to maintain the weekly uptrend. And at this point, the hourly trend has to change back in favor of the bulls. We have the same bounce as everybody else, but this bounce is a bit stronger in terms of the proximity we got back close to the high of the day. So we've got resistance that I'm looking at, 754 and 758. Low of support, 713, and we're looking for an hourly lower high. Pretty much everybody into tomorrow is looking for an hourly lower high to be set. So keep that in mind. And we'll see if they can form the higher low after that lower high is set and we start to see some consolidation. TRST, bear break today. We had after hours news after the video I put out for the weekend, Friday, about a bot deal. So that was a bearish reaction initially. Again, look at how correlated everybody is. When volatility picks up, specifically to the downside in the market, you see correlations with all sectors link up. And you can see it on every individual name we're looking at. Not every individual name, but significant amount of individual names have the same setup with the hourly dump and the bounce attempt where we are looking for the hourly lower high to be set. So for TRST, that's the fact, or that's the case as well. 1142 is support. We're looking for the lower high on the hourly to be set compared to 1261. And then the question is, can we hold 1142 on the higher low and change the hourly trend back in favor of the bulls? Because if not, after 1142, the next support level we're looking at is pretty limited because we did not establish a ton of support here on the way up. So we would really be looking down at 1117 and 11 psychological after 1142. Keeping in mind that weekly consolidation here is currently ongoing, and so far so good in terms of being healthy. Potential weekly bull flag we'll keep an eye on. As long as we don't see significant weakness on this daily chart, that weekly chart is going to remain pretty strong. VFF, so the halt on the NASDAQ is due to administrative BS, which is a bit shocking that, you know, we can fall through the cracks like this and the NASDAQ can start listing a ticker and then say, oh, wait, the listing requirements aren't met in terms of settling of shares and things like that. So I don't know how they don't have something in place to prevent that. But unfortunately, people with VFF US shares are going to be stuck a bit. And the Canadian shares started consolidating today. We started filling some of the gap. As soon as we broke 1476 on the Canadian name, the next target is 1407 to fill this gap. So we have the pullback. We have the bounce attempt. We're looking for an hourly lower high to be set. And then we're looking down at support of 1415. Can the bulls hold 1415 and change the hourly trend? Or are we going to drop down to a lower low? So again, for everybody, and the video is going to be a bit shorter than usual because of how similar everybody is, but it's a question of can we form the higher low and change the trend? Or are we going to form a higher low, lower high bear break? Or are we going to form just a lower low? Those are the three scenarios. Most likely scenario is a higher low, and then we'll take it from there because we get a lot of information based on what that consolidation looks like. And let's just look at CGC as an example where the size of the bounce is very telling as to what to anticipate. The more space you create The further that bounce goes, the more likely you are to form a higher low. The more bull volume you see on the way up on that bounce, the more likely you are to form a higher low. So those little clues are things that we determine. So people sometimes will ask me, in this kind of setup and say, before we've even topped out yet, where can we anticipate the higher low to form? And this is cron. And I can't give that information until we, number one, see where we top out. And then number two, see what does the consolidation look like? Are we going to get an hourly bull flag on very low bear volume, which would indicate continuation is very likely? Or is it going to be solid bear volume and a pullback of 50% of the bounce move, which would put us right in the middle of an equilibrium? So that's where we get clues as to determine the most likely scenario when we get tightening ranges. So for VFF, daily consolidation underway. Anything above 1261 is a higher low, and no red flags at this point. Clearly a consolidation day, but daily uptrend still underway. Just be aware this weekly chart is extremely due for consolidation, and when we do top out, we will pull back an easy 20% from that all-time high. It's just not giving us clear indication that the top is in for now just yet. T-God, looking like a climax kind of top with the volume, highest volume in a month. So we saw a push to higher highs, but then a lot of profit taking. Hourly bounce attempt, you can see, is so much weaker than everybody else. So this is where comparing to peers gives you information as well. If I look at the cron bounce on the hourly and I look at the T-God bounce, I can say we are way more likely on T-God to drop to a lower low on this hourly and break 404 than we are to see a higher low and trend change. It's still possible. It's just not the most likely scenario, whereas cron has way more space and is way more likely to form that higher low. So for T-God, if we do drop down to a lower high and lower low on the hourly, we lose the uptrend, and that tells us look for daily consolidation, and the bulls will look for a daily higher low compared to 364. Anything above that keeps the bulls in the uptrend. Bear break on N, big bear volume spike. We had the high, low, lower high, higher low, lower high, tried to form a higher low, couldn't pull it off, and then just bear break. So we broke key support of $1, key support of 98 cents, and now we're just looking down at 90 cents. This is another weekly time frame. I've been, dogging on MedMen on the US side of things because of their weekly chart being the weakest, and N is right there with them. This is one of the weakest charts that you're going to find in the MJ space, looking at everything from the December low to the size of the bounce and to where we stand right now. So MedMen is the weakest of the US sector major names, and N is the weakest of the Canadian side of things, and they really go hand in hand with what their charts look like. Weak. So we'll see if the bulls can hold 90 cents. If we lose 90 cents support, we're looking down at next level of 77, I believe, and that's the case. CXXI, bull break in a big way today. Key support of 160, the double low of the last 2 days held. We had a gap up open, and we broke resistance of 172, that double top first thing. So as soon as you break that resistance level, the bulls have a lot of momentum in their favor. And look at the volume. So you can see early on that volume is going to be high. If in the first hour of trading, you have volume of 630,000, and we look back at Friday's total number of shares of 430,000, that tells us that we surpassed the volume of any of the last 4 days in the first, 30, 40 minutes of trading. So when you get a bull break of a clear double top of resistance and volume of that size, you're going to get follow through. So we're looking now at the next resistance level of 2 psychological. Looking at the weekly chart, bulls have space to work with here after this significant recovery. And let's see, the last daily higher low was down at 154. So anything above that keeps the uptrend intact on the daily. Hourly chart is due for consolidation. We did not establish any support today on the hourly time frame. So I'd be looking at 186 and 187 as a short-term support. But if we do pull back first thing tomorrow morning, we'll just be looking for an hourly higher low to form, perhaps in the lower 180s. NRTH, blue sky breakout. So we were watching this one a while ago. A lot of people in the chat room have been trading this one. Very clear weekly trend change, limited resistance, and we got really quickly to that all-time high after 86 broke. It took under 3 weeks to go from 86 to 130 plus, and the bulls really moving easily with a huge follow-through move. And if you look just on the 5-minute time frame, this candlestick alone went from 132 to 145. That's a 9% candlestick. Obviously, we saw a lot of profit taking, so we look at the hourly, Hourly chart trying to form a higher low off of 116. Huge volatility. Someone bought today in the 140s and was instantly down 20+%. So again, you have to be cautious on these high runners because when we do pull back, we pull back fast, but an equilibrium is the most likely scenario from here. So we got the high of 145, the low of 116. We're going to look for a lower high compared to 145 and a tightening range into tomorrow. If it breaks bearish, then daily consolidation will be underway with an inside bar. Inside bar is probably the most likely scenario tomorrow anyways, but it's just a question of whether the tight range breaks bullish and we look back to the all-time high, or it breaks bearish and we look for a new daily higher low to be established. So a lot of tightening ranges out there. When we see tightening ranges, what that tells me is to slow down my trading. So I can be looking for bearish entries for hourly lower highs to be set into tomorrow, but the more patient trader is just going to wait for hourly tightening ranges to break to give clear signals, or the really patient trader is going to wait for the daily tightening ranges to give us clear breaks in terms of clarity of direction. Hope you had a good day. Lots of bull action still out there on specific individual names, even though other names are pulling back. And we'll look at some U.S. names tomorrow. Not much time for them today. Do good things. See you soon. Picking up on chapter 2 of the road trip adventure. Last we left off was just starting off in Smoky Mountain National Park, North Carolina. Camped there for a few days. Ended up going westward through Kentucky on my way towards Colorado out west, and encountered this nice box turtle guy, and he had some really cool patterns on his back. But what I loved about being able to travel on my own in terms of, choosing the days that I travel is picking when I go to places on weekdays, because there's way less people out there on weekdays. And in Kentucky here, this was the first time I really got to be by myself, because the national park in North Carolina still had a lot of people there. So after about a week on the road, this was my first time being completely alone. And the best part about traveling and road tripping is your agenda is literally, I want to see cool things and I want to get from point A to point B. So the only things you need to worry about are obviously for your safety, but what am I going to eat today? What do I have to carry with me? Where am I going to nap? And make sure you have your tent set up before dark. That's pretty much it. So you have tons of time to just explore and, oh, that looks cool over there. I'm going to go, check that spot out, or I'm going to climb those rocks, or it's just complete freedom, which is really empowering. But got to this spot and again, nobody else around. So just got naked. And the first time I could rinse off dirt and sweat from a week on the road. And what I love most about road tripping and why I think everybody should, practice or do it in some degree is how much we take things for granted as human beings. And I do it as well. Everybody does it. But the kind of things where a shower, if you're showering every day or every other day, it's just this routine. It's this habit and you got to do it. If you're showering once a week or once every 2 weeks, it's the greatest thing that's ever happened to you. And it's so enjoyable. And it just would blow my mind as I was sitting there that you turn a knob and hot water comes out of the wall. And thinking about 99.9% of every human that's ever lived did not have that capability. And the ones that did were reserved for royalty. And here we are, and any average Joe can have 2 places in their house where they turn something, or more than that if you include sinks. You turn a knob and hot water on demand. It's astounding. And even just things such as, a hot meal, or there's so many things where you're road tripping and you're roughing it and you're sleeping in a bed becomes the greatest thing ever. And it just makes you so much more appreciative of those things when you do have them after not having them for a while. So ended up hanging out here, swimming in the creek, found a nice rock to nap on. And when I woke up, there were a bunch of buzzards circling above me and they thought I was a naked dead guy. Fortunately, that was not the case. So a bunch of lush nature in Kentucky as well. And these spots reminded me, I actually didn't put these up, I came across them, but they reminded me of Andy Goldsworthy. And if you're not familiar with Andy Goldsworthy, he's a really, really cool natural artist. He goes out in nature and he does these things. This is his documentary, Leaning into the Wind, but his rock structures, and he makes things out of twigs and leaves and icicles, and the way he manipulates the natural environment, knowing that it's only temporary, the vast majority of his art pieces, is just really cool. Look up Andy Goldsworthy and check out some of the stuff that he does. So that reminded me of a lot of his work in terms of stone stacking. Found a cool feather, was hanging out with Ringo on the trip. keeping me company. That was a spot where I camped got under that overhang, and any rainstorms that came through, I was completely protected and able to have a fire under there. And there were some cool waterfalls nearby as well. And I actually ended up getting a little bit lost in terms of not being able to find my destination of where I was going to camp here. But again, it's the kind of thing where there's nobody around and you just pick a clear spot and to say, well, I'm going to sleep here tonight and then we'll see what tomorrow brings. And what really was another big adjustment was time. So when you're in a routine and you go to work, or you have your routine in daily life, time flies by because it's the same monotonous stuff that you do consistently. And I'm in that space right now, and that's been some of the biggest shifts in my life in the last 5 years, going from every single day being something completely new and foreign and things you're not expecting to see. I know I'm going to Mammoth Cave National Park, but I have no idea what it looks like. I've never been there. And it's just all new and exciting and fresh. And time slows down so much where every single day is so distinctly different than the day before it and the day after it, as opposed to when you're in a routine like I am right now doing the chart guys stuff and doing stocks. I wake up, I have my routine, and that makes the days kind of blend together a little bit. So if you are trying to make things slow down and stop and smell the roses, the more new experiences and the more new stimuli that you can give your senses, the more that's going to happen. And time is very subjective, in my opinion. They've done studies where you take old people and young people and they say, all right, time a minute in your head. And consistently, for older people, they are early. And so that means time, the perception of time means it goes by faster. And the younger people are consistently later, meaning time is perceived slower. So I don't really understand what time is, but I do know that you can manipulate it in certain ways in terms of how it affects your life. So we'll head on to chapter 3, and that's going to continue heading westward through Kentucky to Mammoth Cave National Park, another cool spot, and we'll check in then. I hope you all continue to do good things out there. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.